Well, friends from around the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Win, Rebuild, and Serve Your Fan Base. So welcome to the webinar. And before we get started, let me just show you the playlist you're getting with this one. I don't know what happened. We just got a little funky here, folks. We've got a lot of dancing for some reason. We have dance hall day, safety dance, dance in the dark, and I don't feel like dancing. Then we just threw in, oh yeah, dance the night away. Then we threw in Lemon to a knife fight. So you're getting all of this for the low, low price of free. We will send that out in an email later on. My name is Matt. This is Sarah, and we are going to get into this with some introductions. As mentioned, this is Win. We're going to talk a little bit today about customer service. To do that, introducing my co-facilitator. She's a managing partner of the Chapman and Co. Leadership Institute. She's a really great background for this. She ran the sales incentive programs for our parent company, Barry Waymiller. She's also developed a lot of the content inside. And so when we think about Barry Waymiller being a collection of 110 different acquisitions from around the world, Sarah has played a large and influential part in that. She and I launched the Leadership Institute about 5 years ago. We do work with all sizes and types of organizations around the world. This is the managing partner. Her name is Sarah Nicole Hanna. Sarah?
All three names. All right, my co-facilitator today is Matt Wyatt. Most of you know he comes from a military background, but what I wanted to share about Matt today is a little bit more germane to this particular topic. I think you think about customer service. I mean, you do tend to think about kind of the service, the retail, perhaps the hospitality industry, and you think about how do we as public people interact with those. Matt is the only person that I've ever met who, when we get really, really good customer service, unfailingly, he will ask that person, can I please have the business card of your leader, your supervisor, and I'm going to send them a note to let them know that you're doing a good job. So tip well, that's important right now, but also when you get some good customer service, let some people know about it.
Yeah, let the leaders know. So thank you, Sarah. We're going to get into this. I mentioned Barry Waymiller. For those of you that have been with us on our webinars, this is very familiar for you. For those of you not, I'm going to give you, about 30 seconds of this. Born in 1885, two enterprising Germans, Mr. Barry and Mr. Waymiller. Not to be confused with Senior Barry and Senior Waymiller. Not a funny joke. Fine. Tried it. Was bold. Went for it. Okay, one company, two team members. Today we're about 110 different acquisitions, as mentioned, around the world, over 100 locations, about 12,000 team members. The organization does very well financially and will do very well this year because of a diversified business plan. The reason I bring up the revenue growth is because we wanted you to say that the work that we're doing here, like some people would call them soft skills or human skills, but these are the skills that allow the business to run and create a future for all of us. And so just to mention, this is the parent company. We are completely external facing because of all the attention we got on all of our acquisitions. We transfer the knowledge of being able to build culture in each one of those, and we take the knowledge that we have of working with some really great external companies. We're a full service consulting firm right now. Probably the majority of our work is building up leaders who are able to lead through and understand change and new initiatives and building up things like better customer service that probably needs to adjust to the new environment. Our training courses right now, a lot of work in the diversity and inclusion space, not just by throwing a class at it, but by thinking about from building an inclusive culture, what does that look like? And then of course we do the rest of these to include consulting a lot on the communication consulting side. So that's a little bit about us. A quick sales pitch for this. One is we've transitioned all of our people development and leadership curriculum online. We call it virtual classroom. And so whether it's for individuals, for your teams, for your entire organization, we have tracks for the aspiring or frontline leader to middle management and senior leaders, and some topical tracks you can look at right there. Really economical, extremely accessible. All the events are live run events, virtual, and so very similar to the events that you've seen us run here with the webinars. On the right-hand side here, your right-hand side, we have Include. That's our inclusion course. Rethinking Diversity in the Workplace. We partnered with noted diversity and inclusion expert Fred Falker. He's been in this work for a long time, has an undergrad in this studies in the 70s from Washington University here in St. Louis. Sarah's alma mater as well. He's worked with the St. Louis Police Department. Just an incredible gentleman, and we've married up diversity inclusion kind of course curriculum with our leadership curriculum to provide that. So that's an option that you have, and we can talk to you more about that as the webinar wraps up, but that's a couple of items that we have for you. Some housekeeping, as you see, two beautiful Ferraris. This was Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, who was at fault. Yes, Sebastian Vettel was. I know he was. Crashing here, some housekeeping for you. Everyone is muted. So just engage with chat. Jamie Dix is backstage. You can assist if necessary. We are going to be using Mentimeter. She can help you out with that. The more you comment on whether you agree or disagree or what's going on with the content, the more you learn. A lot of this learning is from all of you. And there'll be a quick survey at the end if you don't mind. We really appreciate any of that housekeeping. And inevitably, one of you will ask, do you provide the slides? Yes, absolutely we do. The slides, the recording, and that awesome funky playlist will be provided to you either through email, and it will also be on ccoleadership.com. Why did I use this slide? Let me think about this. Yes, sometimes when you're looking at a field and you wonder, how did they get those lines? Like, what do they put? How do they grow the grass this way? They're just a mower that has a roller wheel in the back, and they mow in different directions. So the blades of the grass lay down in certain areas. They have people with lines and markers. You can see the cones there where they're literally just mowing. And so that's how you get this pattern that you see. And so the next time you're mowing your lawn, that's what you can do. That feels like a completely useless tip. And now I'm going to transition over to Sarah.
Fun fact of the day for you all. All right.
There you go.
A good majority of you have been faithful listeners to our webinars and are familiar with Mentimeter. If you're new, this is how it works. We're going to ask you to pull out your smartphone or smart device or open up a second browser on your computer. Go to menti.com, menti.com, and use the code 570933. Jamie's going to put it in chat so that you'll always have it right there for you. If for whatever reason you're having some issues with Mentimeter, feel free to put your answer into chat and Jamie will enter it for you. This first question for you all is, what's an organization you think of that provides world-class customer service? If the word does appear bigger, that just means that more people put that in. So right at the moment, Southwest is kind of winning the day in terms of what people think of when they think of really good customer service. I do appreciate the person who put in very, very specific, the Nordstrom men's shoe department.
You always fall for them.
I always do, but I will tell you that the women's shoe department, equally good service. So Nordstrom in there a couple of times, Disney Cruise, Zingerman's Deli, Menards. My kids are big fans of Menards. I have no idea why. REI, Apple, Chick-fil-A, which was winning for a little bit. So
just a call out to the Cavs fan for the Quicken Loans Arena. That's a great place to see a game. Definitely, that's a great one.
So a lot of these are common, and we think of there are these organizations that have really both they have a loyal fan base to use that term, but when we say the word customer service, there's a handful of organizations that come to mind. And so the webinar today is, how do we both learn from what those organizations have accomplished, but how do we integrate it no matter what industry or product or service that we happen to employ? Our second question is reflecting a little bit back more on you all. So for your organization, how would you rate your organization's customer service? Is it world class? We are in a league with Disney. Is it good? Others talk about us. It's average. It's not our primary strength. We're good at technology, not so good with the customers. Not good. This is an area we need help in. That is why I'm on your webinar. Or terrible. Others actually talk about us, but not in a good way. So seeing a spectrum come in. Oh, we've got a brave person who says terrible. Others talk about us. We do appreciate the honesty and transparency, and a good percentage of us that are in the middle. So anybody who selected world class, the burden is on you to be super vocal in chat. So please put in what we're missing, things that your organization does well. We certainly would want to know that and learn from everybody who's on this call today. All right, our third question. Since the majority of us said there's at least a little margin for improvement, it might not be large, what's the one thing, if you had to pick the one thing you need to do better as an organization to make your customer service better? What is the needle that you need to wiggle, the thing that you need to tackle in order to make your customers feel like they are being served the way we might experience at Disney and Nordstrom's and Chick-fil-A and all of those companies that we mentioned? So we're seeing faster response time, listening to customers' needs. Am I just putting my product out versus actually doing a voice of the customer? See the people. Okay, that's an interesting one. We are going to get into what are those actual behaviors that close that distance. More thorough on email, eliminate the runaround. Do I shift the burden to the customer? Sometimes, we tend to do that. It's a lot of work. for our customers to do business with us. Proactive communication, friendlier on the phone, urgency, absolutely. So you're going to get all these responses as well, and perhaps areas for you all to think about.
Yeah, sorry, I really like the person who also wrote hire the best. And so I think there's probably a combination of efforts. Am I hiring for this? There's certain innate talents for customer service. And at the same time, I'm going through this change with the team that I have. So how do I do that? And also inspire the best in the people that I have. So it's not an opposition to that, we would agree, but also the team that you have now, there are things we can do and help you with, and we're going to get into that.
All right, our fourth question for you is, and it might seem like, well, why are you guys asking me this question? You're bumming me out. What's the one thing that prevents your organization from being better at customer service? It's pretty easy for us to identify, well, the one thing we need to do is X, Y, Z. We need to streamline our processes. We need to be more communicative. And so what's the thing that's getting in the way? If this were a coaching conversation, some group coaching, we'd say, well, okay, what holds you back? You know what you need to do. So what's the thing that gets in the way? There's some good, honest people. Laziness. Yep, sure, absolutely. Focus on the money. Perhaps I don't have the right kind of justification to say, actually, we're going to invest a little so that we can kind of save a ton on customer retention. Cultural transformation. I need my employees to feel it first before my customers feel it. Not enough people. A finite mindset. So am I really willing to invest in the people stuck in the old ways? Absolutely. All right. So a lot of these topics we're going to mention throughout the webinar, but I think it's just important to acknowledge that it's not for lack of knowing. One, that we have an issue or a gap. Two, what the gap is, but then what's the thing that's actually going to get in the way? So we're going to look at it from the customer's angle. What percentage of customers have scrapped a planned purchase due to poor customer service? So how many of us, we are in the sales pipeline, we were going to make the purchase. Then I run into that perhaps non-friendly person on the phone, or somebody drops the communication ball. What percentage of us actually scrapped due to that type of an experience? I see in the comments, especially online. So as we reveal the correct answer, 55%. So over half of us have chosen to do that. All right. Second question for you all. What percentage of customers fall in love with the brand and remain loyal because of friendly customer service reps? And so literally the person that I'm interacting with, they are so good that I will do anything for this brand. I will champion them. I'm putting the bumper sticker on my car. I'm telling everybody I know about them. And it's simply because of the interaction that I have with that organization's people. And those of you who selected 73%, you are correct. That is the impact that you can have. So speaking of surveys, percentages, and falling in love, this is a hard transition, people. This is only going to make sense if you've seen the movie Anchorman, and I give you what percentage of time does Sex Panther cologne work every time. And Matt's laughing because he made me do this one. And it's teeing up for the fact that we are going to show a clip of this movie at the end. And so this is our gift to you all in our last webinar in this series, that you are going to get to watch a bit of Anchorman. And we look at all these stats all the time, and we quote this to each other all of the time.
I like that there's a lot of people who are like, it works all the time. It works all the time.
I know. So what percentage of time does it work every time? And that correct answer is 60% of the time it works every time. So I'm worried that you all didn't get this, which means you haven't seen the movie, which makes this totally seem out of left field. But we are going to catch you up. Do not worry. Your pop culture reference is safe. All right. So a few more stats for you. And this is a kind of, when we dug into this topic, this piece is replete with statistics. It is well studied. We know these things, and yet sometimes we have difficulty making the change inside the organization. What we know to be true, that the majority of customers, regardless of industry, regardless of the product and service, are up for grabs. There's only a small percentage of us that are unshakable. I have my brand. I drive Harley Davidson. That's what I do. There's certainly brands that create this. But the vast majority is dominated by what we would call ephemerals, consumers who feel connected to brands, but hey, I'll take another bid. If you have a lower price, a different product or service, I could be compelled to switch. And this is from Merritt's, who are great partners to us, a great data company and customer service loyalty company here in St. Louis. We also know that if we're able to get into that kind of unshakable group, you can stratify that out a little further. Now, some of these stats are a little like, okay, not sure I would do that. 4% will get a permanent brand logo tattoo. And if you think that we make that up, you just have to reference the Harley Davidson example that I already gave.
Also, I am getting a tattoo tomorrow of the Nordstrom's men's shoe department.
You are really just that specific logo. Is it a loafer?
On my neck.
Okay. All right. 3% of us would end a friendship over criticism of the brand. 3% name their child after the brand founder, which seems unthinkable, but I am willing to bet there's a lot of Elons running around out there. 20% will display a brand sticker on their car. And then kind of the major stats, almost close to half of us would either wear a t-shirt promoting the brand or willing to get into an argument to defend the brand. And so this is kind of a little bit, we're talking about where does loyalty meter up and against what that customer service is for your organization.
Yeah, and Sarah mentioned this company called Merritt's Motivation. This is directly from them. This is really super cool. This is their multi-loyalty framework. If afterwards you would like to talk with them about how they work with loyalty, we'd love to pass you on. They're friends of ours, and occasionally we partner with them from the external facing. But this is their multi-loyalty framework. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to show you some examples. Then we're going to interact with it. So I'm going to start on the bottom left. In this case, we're looking at the very bottom. These two would be very transactional. On my left-hand side, I'm looking at transactional and active. On my left-hand side, is passive and transactional. So bottom right-hand side is mercenary-based. In other words, I'm going to optimize the offer. This might be the places that I would go that are just, I'm very active in how I advertise for it. I have the lowest price product and or service. I'm going after it because you've made it so compelling about the money. And I'm going to go to it, I'm going to buy it. And by the way, as I mentioned this, none of these are bad or good. They're just different. And so understanding the loyalty that you're in allows us to have a customer service that meets those expectations. Mercenary-based, I'm optimizing the offer. Moving to bottom left. Inertia-based, I'm going to optimize the barrier to exit. In other words, a really good example would be I'm so involved in whatever it might be, it's really difficult for me to leave your organization, whatever the club is that I've joined, whatever the purchasing repeat purchases. Inertia-based means I'm optimizing the barrier to exit. I'm making it challenging to leave. All right, top left is experience-based. This is I'm in it. I would go through it again because of how fantastic the entire experience was. I'm optimizing the interaction. On the top right-hand side, this is a little bit what Sarah was mentioning, like I'm getting a tattoo, I'm arguing about it, those kind of things. Social-based. This is about I'm part of the tribe. So I know I just went through those and gave it to you at just a really fast one, but I'm going to show you some examples. And I see in the chat room that someone said, IKEA, they make it difficult to leave. they do. It's a little bit different because I get what you're saying. You got to walk all around, then you got to go past that incredible soft serve ice cream and the Swedish meatball counter. I get it. IKEA would be a good example of probably multiple ones of these. Probably inertia-based because I have a bunch of IKEA furniture. This fits. It looks the same. A little bit experience-based because I go there and I get kind of the influence of Sweden. And then also mercenary-based in that it's very inexpensive compared to other furniture stores. So really good example. And yes, I missed the smell of the cinnamon rolls. You're right. My kids love this stuff. So let's put some companies behind it. And if I've missed it slightly or you're like, no, they also play in this area, you're probably right. I'm just giving you some basics here. So mercenary-based would be, and I know that the tone of that is a little rough, but it basically means I'm going after you with a price. So Best Buy, Target, Walmart, Amazon, and I realize you might get different customer service from them, but understanding what loyalty they're trying to command here on the optimizing the offer, the price. Inertia-based, probably the best example besides your local utilities is your mobile phone. It's a lot. Now I have to get a new phone. It's a new SIM card. I have to sign a new contract. I got to update my billing. They optimize the barrier to exit. This is why they try so hard to get new customers in and then keep them in. Experience-based, we've joked around a little bit about shoes. Well, there's Nordstrom and Zappos. Both the people really enjoy the experience. You saw in the beginning when we asked who's known for great customer service, Southwest is a good example of just a great experience. Sarah and I fly a lot for our job. We have a couple airlines that are clients of ours, but Southwest is definitely, they do a fantastic job with everything from their gate agents all the way through their flight attendants, even the pilots. Trader Joe's as well started in Manhattan Beach, California, one of my hometowns. So great other organization, experience-based. Social-based, like optimizing the tribe. And we saw somebody mention Disney Cruise Line. Disney has a really social-based type of loyalty. Apple computers would be a good example. You know your social base and optimizing the tribe when a sticker of your company gets put over the other computer name. Like even people who own a Dell, you'll see people who put an Apple sticker on it. And Tesla, that is definitely social based. The best example I can give you for Tesla, my brother owns one of these, a Model X. He was one of the first purchasers of the Model X SUV. My brother's not a very social person, but he would go to Tesla car club meetings, which is probably logical. They all go and talk about their Tesla. He would also attend Tesla meetings of people who wanted to order a Tesla but had not ordered it yet. He would bring his vehicle and talk about the features of it. So that's a good example of optimizing the tribe. And even my brother, who never calls, Andrew, if you're on this, just call your brother once in a while. Even he will bring his Tesla and talk to people about it. So that's a really good example of a multi-loyalty framework. So let's interact with this if you don't mind. Let's think about your organization. Where would you place your organization in this merits loyalty framework in current day? So where you are right now, if you had to pick one of these, your mercenary base, you optimize the offer, the pricing. Your inertia base, you optimize the barrier to exit. Your experience base, the interaction is fantastic. Or your social base, like you optimize your tribe. And as these are coming in, Sarah, where would you put, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, where would you put Chapman & Co.?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I would say experience-based for sure would probably be the leader. I think there's an element of social-based. You guys are evidence of it. So I think have grown in that, especially ironically because of COVID and kind of going and bringing people more together who aren't necessarily in the same organization, but primarily experience-based.
Yeah, to know us is to love us, experience-based. I would agree. All right, what about this one? Where would you like your organization to be in the merits loyalty framework moving forward? Like in the future, where would you like it to be? Perhaps it's the exact same, but give us a look, and then I'll move back and forth on these two slides to see how we're changing this. And as these votes come in, a big change here. It looks like most of you want to be either social-based or experience-based. And so I won't move the slides back and forth, but obviously we have a huge shift more into the experience-based and social-based. What's interesting, and when you talk to the experts over at Merits, what they'll say is, our thought was, gosh, it'd probably be a lot more. It's a lot more work. It's much harder to get the top, to get the experience-based and the social-based. And actually what it is you have to be smarter. You have to be more creative. And so when they work with loyalty frameworks, it isn't about, oh, that's impossible to get, but you better be smarter than it, because the inertia base is a little bit more about building the structure and mercenary base is about pricing. So the other two is really a lot of the work that we're going to talk about, which is great because the majority of you say this is where we want to move into, and we've got some content forward on that. Well, specifically Sarah does.
All right. Speaking of Disney Cruise Lines, Disney Institute, a quote, there is a domino effect between internal customer satisfaction and external customer satisfaction. In order to produce happy external customers, it's important and imperative to build customer satisfaction between internal customers. And so there's a couple of mindset pieces that we're going to go through before we give you the actual tool that helps you make progress in this direction. And some of you already got this. You put it into the word cloud. What's the thing that holds us back? The thing that holds us back is our internal culture. And the thing we need to do is perhaps more of a whole-scale transformation. And we would say it this way: your customer experience will never exceed your employee experience. I cannot give that which I do not have. And if I am not being treated this way, it is hard to model that behavior, even if I am a person responsible for direct customer service. So why should we listen to the Disney Institute? You got most of this list. If you look at the brands that are kind of highest rated in customer service, Disney Cruise Lines tops the list. You do have See's Candies, Justice Brands, Land's End, Chick-fil-A, Publix, Vita Coast, Avon, Morton's Steakhouse, and to me, the most interesting is Cracker Barrel. I mostly go for the fried apples, but they also do have really good customer service. So they are credible. So the two mindset pieces. One is, first, do we actually define the term? What is a customer? From a dictionary definition standpoint, we think of it as a customer, somebody who pays for goods and services, versus anyone, internal, external, anyone becomes a customer at the moment we have an opportunity to serve. Do I immediately shift my mindset and go into the mode of how can I help? So the first piece when we go down this road is to say, do we really actually, one, believe that? And how do we kind of introduce that inside the organization? And to the point of the Disney quote, do I believe that inside the organization, we're all essentially links of a chain? I cannot give that which I do not have. And so if we're basically all a bunch of internal service providers, and I might not be externally facing to the customer, in the Barry Wehmiller organization, a capital equipment goods manufacturer, our engineers very rarely interact with the customer. But if they aren't providing really, really good service to our production team members, the chain breaks down. So this isn't customer service training that I just give the front line. This is customer service training I have to give the entire organization so that everybody understands their piece of it. And to get there, we have a service cycle or kind of 5 steps that you can think about. When I'm addressing these links in the chain, what am I actually asking you to do?
Yeah, and I'm going to get into this. I did have a question in the chat about, well, can it be more than one when it comes to the loyalty framework? So when we look at this loyalty framework, can it be more than one? It can. Typically, we see that organizations are at least going for or is stronger in one of these areas, and then perhaps it also happens in the other ones. But typically, we see that that's one and sometimes two, and Merritt's has some really good studies on this. And part of it is just asking you to interact with it. So we think about, well, actually, where are we driving this? It's a really great conversation to get into with both customer service people and people as we strategically look at what do we want to be known for. And so that's an easy one. And you might be wondering, well, why is there a helicopter as your icon? Well, Sarah's going to take that one. I'm going to take the easier one. We're going to talk about these uncovering the real needs. So one would be, have you ever received a gift from someone that would have been perfect for them? So I gave this gift to Sarah for one of her accomplishments. It's a Ford V8 competition chainsaw engine. It crew serves. You got 4 people. I know I shouldn't like it. It is a little noisy. It doesn't meet city code. She has trees. I just thought it'd be great for her. But this is the idea. Like, do you understand what actually would be the need? And then is it for them? I'm not going to go through this entire piece. This was from one of our previous webinars on voice of the customer, conversations. And some questions that we'll ask as consultants, but anybody would, and uncovering the real need of your customers, especially as you're rolling into kind of a post-COVID moment or with all of the changes that are going on. It's pretty much to say, before we even get into, do we have a product or service or offering, I want to know, how has it been going from your perspective? I want to know a lot about you, and being insatiably curious about your world allows me then that if I'm going to create a sale, that I'm going to give you the right product, the right service, and the right offering from my organization before just jumping right in. As mentioned, all these slides will be available to you. We'll provide these questions for you so you can give them to your team just to say, which ones would you add? Which ones are we already doing? Which ones do we see some interest in? The picture which keeps drawing my attention over, this was when the Beatles first came over to America, so the British invasion. So seeking the common goal. Sarah's going to explain why we have a helicopter.
All right, I complete my voice of customer conversations, and then I have to seek the common goal. And this is in reference both to kind of consulting or longer term customer relationships, but it relates to a more retail environment. So it could be a very quick customer exchange in which I quickly find out what I have to offer is not satisfying to the person who happens to be standing in front of me. And so the reason for the helicopter icon is, how do I, when there is a conflict, how do I essentially copter up? And for those of you who are thinking, that is not a helicopter, that is the Goodyear blimp, you're right, but it was a good photo. And essentially, how do I get a bigger vantage point? This is hard to do when we're in the heat of it, and sometimes it feels like, gosh, is the customer always right? I feel like I'm really getting beat up here. I'm trying to provide good service. How do I actually kind of come to something that is mutually agreeable? So I uncovered the customer's needs. Now I need to uncover what's really, really important to me and assess whether there is actually a legitimate conflict. and then see if I can figure out how do I kind of rise up and think creatively on a way that we can both walk out of the situation feeling like we got what we came for. So to give you kind of an example, and again from our parent company, Barry Waymiller, one of the things that's really challenging for us is we've got kind of these big machines that are in the field. We might be making a machine that makes toilet paper. It is the length almost of half a football field, and there are a lot of parts that go into that. If our customer has a down machine, they need a part really, really quickly. They also need to pay a fair price for that part. For us to run our business, to employ the people that we do, we need a reasonable margin. And so if you just look at it from an agree-disagree standpoint, we're essentially in conflict, and you let supply and demand kind of figure it out. Versus really looking at it through the lens that the common goal is to maintain the business relationship. So how do we think creatively about that? I know that we're giving you a really simplistic example, but this actually comes from somebody that we know fairly well, Bill Urey, who does this on a world scale. He's actually a peace negotiator, and he wrote the book, Getting to Yes. He talks a lot about the third side. So instead of getting into that agree-disagree debate, how do I kind of always look at the third side of any kind of conflict? So what I would say to the customer is, well, I hear what you're saying. So what are different ways that we can make progress? What are all the possibilities? What can you guarantee me in terms of perhaps a certain volume that we can then get you the price that you want? What if we did this? What are your ideas to help us solve this? And how might we work together so that we can preserve the business relationship, which is the goal that we both want. So it's a combination of how do I reframe, but how do I also think creatively about the options that are in front of me instead of getting into either the customer is always right or I lose that customer.
Yeah, and as I move it back into the service cycle under setting expectations, we have another question from the chat. I'll just leave this out there. Maybe some people can actually provide an answer because this one's a tough one. How many failures of a company, basically if your company fails, are loyal customers willing to accept before they lose the trust and leave? It's a really tough question to answer because I think it very much depends, product, the service, how loyal they really were, how long the relationship were. There's a lot of factors in this, but welcome people's chat on that and what they've seen in their own organization. I think for us, the more we have put energy into the relationship, there is a direct linear relationship to how many mistakes we can make. And we've made them, but the more we've put on the front end of showing up as true partners, the more someone's willing to say, I know this is not indicative of your character, let's try it again. And we'll say the same thing. The first thing we're going to say is, no matter whose fault it was, the first thing we're coming to it is, sorry, this didn't work out. Let's figure out how to solve it. How do we show up as a partner? So I appreciate people working on the chat. Thanks, Jimmy, for putting it in there. Let's talk a little bit about setting expectations. And so my quality of my customer's experience is not just a direct result of the quality of my products or services. Customer satisfaction is really nuanced. It's about how closely their expectations and experiences conform to what they expect. In other words, if I'm going to the rental car counter, I expect to have a German luxury car, and instead I get a subcompact. It's not that the subcompact isn't a quality vehicle, it's that literally my expectations were not that. And so a little bit, and this is from George Colombo on setting and managing your customers' expectations. So then how do we do that? Well, there are pretty much 3 steps. One is I'm going to discuss it with the customer. I'm not going to go through these because I know these seem really simple questions. But if I were to give you one reason why we see organizations not do well at customer services, they weren't curious enough. They didn't know enough about their customer or what was going on with them. And so if I were to just say, well, give me one tool, it would be default to asking more questions so you understand that person, their needs, their desires, and what they expect out of this. 2 is to review the outcome of the conversation. This is why most customer services will say, hey, well, I'm just going to send you not just a receipt, but here's a little recap of what the conversation was. And then conclude only once you've set the expectations that both people say, yeah, this is exactly what we are expecting. You don't want to set yourself up for some of the disappointment that would occur on this. All right, in the service cycle, let's talk about customer service itself, because I know we've given you the mindset. We talked about uncovering some needs, seeking the common goal if there are issues, setting the expectations. Now, what about the service? And here are some stats. They're not Sex Panther cologne stats, but they're still good stats. All right, so this gets a little bit into what Martin was asking, like how many are going to say they'll consider switching companies immediately, about a third. 60% say following 2 or 3 instances of poor service. So directly on Martin's question, how many times? I think it's highly dependent, but the stats would show about 2 to 3, and about 60% of them are leaving on you. 93% are likely to make repeat purchases with companies who offer excellent customer service. And just to name this quickly from people who consume a lot of travel and those type of things, Southwest Airlines used to be more on the mercenary loyalty part. It used to be the cheapest ticket you could get, direct flights. Nowadays, there are a lot of times the Southwest is not the cheapest ticket, and yet they're one of the most solid airlines around from a financial perspective. So it's a good example of once they have people in with that excellent customer service, people stay. The other example I would give you is Kia cars. When they were first coming into the market, manufactured from Korea, they knew competing with the high-end other vehicles, they had to offer something better to get people in. And so what they offered was the 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty to get people in, and then excellent service, knowing that it would be years before they got a following. But it's a good example of leaning into that. And then 77% maintain loyal relationships for over 10 years. The example I would give you there would be my bank, for being a military veteran, would be USAA. All right, let's talk about great customer service behaviors. And the picture here I'm going to show you is See's Candies. If I get this date wrong, I so apologize. They were started in 1928 in downtown Los Angeles, where my father's from, pretty close to my hometown. Great customer service, and the reason, it used to be you could only get them when you flew back to Southern California. When I was home, all of a sudden you see them in all the airports because they are now a Berkshire Hathaway company. So Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, and their ability to scale their product, they have great customer service and continually do. Here are some of the customer service behaviors, literal behaviors you need your people doing for other people to say, the customer to say, that's a great customer experience. The eye contact, the empathetic listening, I want to know what's going on in your life. Mirroring just means my emotions, my outward looks are mirroring what yours are. Asking questions, there's some personal honesty, personal interest, truthfulness, and transparency. I think this is why when you're at a restaurant or when you're with someone and you're purchasing something and you ask, hey, what would you get here? And they tell you, and then you say, what would you not get? Or they offer to you, I wouldn't order that. That's when you know you're getting great customer service. The person's literally, I'm not trying to just sell you something. I'm trying to sell you what's really best on the menu. And See's Candies does a great job with that. And these are some of those customer service behaviors. By the way, these are the same behaviors we teach in our inclusivity courses. These are where human relations occur. And so a good example of See's. And you go, okay, so I just need to get my people to have eye contact, some positive nonverbals, I don't know, smile, ask some questions, and we sell, right? No, my friends, you do not, because of something called the Turing Test. The Turing Test was developed years ago to try and figure out, it is the landmark test that they're trying to get to where can we get artificial intelligence to basically trick and to mimic and to where a human being thinks they're talking to another human being. That's the test. In other words, one person, in this case, person C there, is speaking to computer A and other human B. If person C cannot distinguish between which one is the human, they've passed the Turing test. So you're thinking, why is this coming up, and would Alexa or Siri pass the Turing test? No, Alexa and Siri do not even come close to passing the Turing test. It's debatable as to whether we have any computer that's been able to do this. The reason I mention this is you can't fake it. So when I mention these behaviors, people can pick up instantly if you're not being truthful, you literally don't really have interest in me, and your smile is completely fake. I need you to actually know this because humans can pick up on whether they're talking to somebody who's basically not really in it, or it's more you've been told in customer service training to do this. So your next logical question would be, well, then what is an organization that really does that really well? If you have not heard of Zingerman's Delicatessen, I know it's a strange right turn here. They are really world renowned for their customer service. They also offer consultancy. It's called Zing Train. I would recommend that you go check out their website as well. They do a fantastic, incredible job at this. And their 3 steps to great customer service are simple, right to the point. What the customer need, get it for them accurately, politely, enthusiastically, go the extra mile. They train to it. But their people believe in it, and they have some world-class customer service. And so your next question is, that's great, But so Matt and Sarah, then how do I get my people, again, to believe in this, lean in, and want to do it? And I say to you, that's why we ran 14 other webinars on culture and building your people up. This is why we gave you Carl Douglas and Captain Kirk. I mean, we ran all these for you. And if you'd like to see any of the recordings about how I get people to lean into a culture, where I'm bought into the goals and the process and all of those things, you can go to ccoleadership.com, check out resources. All of our videos, all of the past webinars are recorded. You can share those with your team. But in all honesty, that's exactly why we ran all of that content, is to get you a better culture so people aren't faking it, and I understand what the goals of the organization are, and I actually believe in what we're doing. I know I'm just kind of running through this, and I know Jamie's putting in some links for the resources. Appreciate that, Jamie. We have some questions coming in, and we'll definitely triage those as we come in there. On customer service, huge part of this is under communication. All right, so one thing is, how do I communicate when challenges arise? One is bad news isn't necessarily bad, it is information. An uninformed update is not really an update. And if I can't meet the expectations, I'm going to renegotiate what the expectations are in my commitment. This is why we seek discounts or those type of things. The sign here is how they call in plays a lot of times in college football, and you'll see a lot of the plays being called in by just a random assortment of pictures, which actually means some kind of play calling. But the point here is when the challenges come up with something's unforeseen, I'm not necessarily treating it as bad news and avoid it. I need to share that information. I need to share that information to keep that up. And you go, okay, well, that's communicating when challenges arise. Here's communicating when there are no challenges. I want to alleviate the discomfort of waiting in silence. This is why great customer service, you'll see updates to your email account, or perhaps you'll get a text or something that's on the way, or there's been a slight delay. A lot of people would say Amazon is a really good customer service organization. They've built a system within there that's constantly keeping you informed. And so that's the reason why. Builds a little trust, sustains that valuable partnership. And you might uncover some challenges on the customer side earlier rather than later. The communication thing we can't stress enough. The picture here is of doubles volleyball. If you ever wonder why people put their hand signals behind them like this, the other player behind this net player is trying to figure out where they should play defense. 2 means I'm blocking angle, 1 means I'm blocking line, and so it allows you to shift to where you need to play. The metaphor here is even when there are no challenges, I'm just playing the game. I'm constantly communicating from myself as a customer service representative to who that customer actually is. So that's on the communication side as we move into closing the loop. Sarah?
Right. And I think that this is just in full disclosure, this is probably where we tend to kind of fall short in the customer service cycle. Like we uncovered the needs, we asked you a whole ton of questions, we found the common goal, we set really clear expectations, there's a contract, there's a proposal, we do the service, and then we're all so exhausted from all of that effort. Do we actually kind of come back and close the loop and do the due diligence that we need to do? So this is kind of an often forgotten step in the process as you think about a service cycle. The reason this is really important is it has everything to do with customer retention. And so, you know, kind of the saying here is that it is much more expensive to build a new customer than it is to keep the ones that you actually have. And so I know there's a question in the Q&A that it revolves around with everything that we have facing us in business with today's challenges, focusing on just core financial strength. How do you shift the conversation to moving to or maintaining or raising your loyalty focus? How do I get this into the mix? And so one answer to that question is to say the financial strength that you have is not disconnected from this idea of loyalty. I want to be able to retain the customers that already know us and love us. So stats in this regard, a 5% increase in customer retention correlates with at least a 25% increase in profit year over year. And I apologize that this is a US stat, but US companies lose $136.8 billion per year due to avoidable consumer switching. And so if I was trying to make the case, I would say this is exactly why we need to work on what kind of loyalty we want, and then where are the gaps to get us where we would like to go. So how to close the loop? It's typically as simple as I'm going to check in. How did that go? We had a very clear conversation about expectations. Did we deliver on what was agreed upon? If not, this is my opportunity to kind of make it right. And a story, and we'll just, we don't always get this right. I think we had a situation with a client in the last year in which we had an event that honestly didn't go the way that either one of us expected. For us, very surprising ways. Our expectations were clearly not aligned. And the part we did well was we did ask for some closed the loop feedback, but we did it too late, and we didn't do it in person. This is pre-COVID, and it's not a client here in St. Louis. And the feedback was, you should have gotten on a plane. And our response was, you are correct. We should have gotten on a plane, and we won't make that mistake again. So how do I close the loop, even when it's really, really difficult? Get the feedback, because that's going to matter more to the customer at the end of the day. And if I ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, that's where I lose the customer, and the customer's for sure not going to come back.
Hey, Sarah, can I just add really quick on the question about how do we shift the conversations to maintain and raise your loyalty focus with the really, really hard pressures of the financial side of things? I don't know if this is the best answer, so we need you to probably put some more things in chat. One of the things that we noticed was a lot of times the organizations that were talking to us, our vendors, they would immediately start talking about the sale. They would never check in to understand that our needs have changed, and I was willing to invest and spend money, but not if you were telling me to just do the same thing or offering the same product or service. So in the service cycle where they went off was, I haven't identified the needs, because the needs have changed dramatically. And this is the voice of the customer, which is why we'll always say when you're starting that call, you need to just check in and see how someone's doing. Things are so rapidly changing right now in the environment that if I'm trying to sell the exact same thing, makes it pretty challenging. The other part I would offer is for those of your customers who are very loyal, just admit it. And so when we're on sales calls, we'll tell people our consultancy lost 95% of our clients. We've had to completely switch. We want to know what's going on with them. And that's the reason we've moved over into a lot of online and virtual training. And we'll mention that virtual classroom again. We've had to move that pretty quickly. So that's an example there.
All right. This is what we've brought you through. So regardless of if you're in professional services, if you are more in a retail environment, you're in construction, whatever it happens to be, we would offer that this service cycle applies. And sometimes it's happening very, very quickly. It's happening within a 5-minute conversation. Sometimes this is happening over the length of a 6-month, 9-month relationship before I actually are in a contract and doing some real work together. How do I uncover the real needs? How am I listening? Being attuned to what the real question somebody is asking. How can I seek the common goal when and if our real needs perhaps are in conflict? How do I set the expectations? Because there's some, I'm trying to think of, like maybe a Waffle House, or I'm trying to think of where you're like, I know it's not going to be great. I still love it. It's perfectly fine.
Waffle House is fantastic. Don't do that.
I've never actually been to Waffle House, but I'm just thinking, like, it's
so
not going to be the Ritz. It's Waffle House, so we're okay. We're going to set some expectations. We are going to deliver that service. We're going to close the distance. We're going to have all of those behaviors. Those behaviors are going to be very genuine because it is how I am being treated inside the organization. And then when it's all said and done, I'm going to ask, how could I have been better? Did we meet the expectations that we set out in the beginning? So 5-minute conversation with that kind of customer service agent in the airport perhaps also works the same way in long-term consulting relationships as well. So with that,
one quick call before we go to the feedback part on the customer service. And we didn't specifically mention this, but I saw it up in chat regarding airlines and weather. It's obvious that airlines, I can't control the weather, and my number one priority is to get you to your destination safe. There are some airlines that will say, we're so sorry about the delay. We're so sorry weather has impacted the travel, versus, I just want you all to know weather is not our fault, therefore there's no refunds. It's an entirely different conversation that the organization and the people being trained this way bring. And so the feeling that I have as a person who's consuming your goods or services is different. When that happens, a really great way that I see someone like a USAA that does great customer service, or a Southwest Airlines they're constantly telling you about, I'm going to let you know when we're getting back to you. So as an example, if I'm on an airplane, there's a delay for weather. Sometimes you'll see the pilot, and the pilot, she or he, will say, hey, we're under weather delay. Here's what's going on. Then they'll say, I'm going to let you know in 10 minutes what the update is. They might not have any more information, but in 10 minutes, they're letting you know what the update is. I'm going to let you know in 15 minutes how this is going. I'm still on the airplane, but at least I have somebody communicating with me versus sitting for an hour and a half on the tarmac wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to be able to take off here? So really good examples of constant communication in that whole service cycle.
We do have a question in the Q&A. Where do you incorporate risk and the possibility that innovation in product or service will negatively affect loyalty? I used to love you until version 2.0, and I do not love you anymore. This is a complicated question, so I don't know that we can give a very detailed answer. I would highly recommend that you look at a company called Stratagen in a book called Jobs to be Done Framework. It marries up innovation with essentially voice of the customer. And so how do you kind of decrease the risk of that innovation? Well, I have to be very, very clear what jobs my customer base need to be done. And if I'm innovating in alignment with what they are expecting, then I decrease the risk. And so based on their framework, they've got some great outcomes in terms of the percentage of innovations that are actually successful if you follow that process. So I know that's not a very detailed response, but there's certainly some really good work out there, and that is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's just to mention, Jamie just put their website into our chat, so you can go check them out. The other thing I would do is from the innovation and loyalty, and this is not self-serving, I mean this sincerely, I would look at our last webinar where we went through some immunity to change. What are the derailers to change of an organization? It's on a recording, ccoleadership.com/resources. Jamie can put the link to that video in there, and we talk a little bit about how organizations do innovation work, because we've done that before.
Right, as we like to do, we would love some feedback from you all. The first round is feedback to each other. So what are you going to try as a result of this webinar? This is kind of what's your to-do, what's your action item, and if you put it into Mentimeter, then we'll create the cheat sheet that we will send out to all of you. And so if you wouldn't mind going ahead back to Menti, putting in the code if you need to, and just letting us know what's the thing that you're going to try. You might inspire somebody else who's listening in to try the same thing. So it's always a great way to get a few ideas. I like this loyalty loop focus. That is multiple ideas right in one. How do I drive loyalty, and how perhaps do I close the loop? Focus on internal customers as well. We would offer that is the most essential. A great example, it's kind of a landmark example, is the Ritz-Carlton. Their creed is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to treat people inside the organization so well that then they treat that external customers so well. Don't be married to my description of the customer's problem. They might see the pain more clearly than they see either problem, which that's a great one, because sometimes I love my product and service. I love it so much that I want to see in your problem my solution. And then we're down a rabbit trail where neither one of us are going to be happy with the outcome. Might be still a great product, but I didn't really actually hear what the customer need was. Lots on improve internal customer service first. Absolutely essential. Seek opportunities for customer service conversations versus just the transactional score. We've been doing a lot of those. They are instructive, they're valuable. Absolutely a good place to start if you have to just pick one type of action item. Be courageous in asking for feedback.
I like this one about customer service behaviors of C's, not rocket science, just being a good human. That's totally doable. You're absolutely right. And getting some feedback from your own internal people, what keeps us from showing up that way? Because then I'm going to get into what the internal kind of stuff is in the organization.
All right. Now we're going to float up a poll that's back in Zoom. This is feedback to us. If you wouldn't mind filling out the short survey, that poll is up. And just to note that the photo is of the Cleveland Browns. If you look up what's the most loyal fan base, so what's the most loyal customer, so to speak, it's the Cleveland Browns. They have not won a Super Bowl, and the weather is terrible, y'all, and yet they still show up. So that's why the Cleveland Browns.
Listen, we have a person who loves the Quicken Loans Arena, so I'm thinking they're in Cleveland. They love that town because Cleveland is a great town.
Just giving them a little love. All right, so what's next? It's not the last dance. There are some people listening right now who have been on all 14 of our free webinar series. So you know who you are. We so appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with us during this kind of crazy time. We are not leaving you. We are just changing formats just a little bit and creating this virtual classroom that we have mentioned. It's all our entire leadership album, so to speak, and it has tracks for frontline leaders, middle managers, and senior leaders, in addition to our content on inclusion, customer service, and continuous improvement. And so if you want to build your own track within it, we can certainly work with you to customize for your organization, but everything that we have will be available to everybody who is in on the platform. So check that out. And also one last piece on the inclusion. I know we mentioned it at the top. We just believe so much in Fred and the work that he's doing, and we know that almost every company on the planet is at least asking the question right now, are we doing enough in this area? So if you just want a quick phone call, we're happy to chat. There's no sales pitch here, we're just happy to help. So if this is an area that you're focused on, give us a call. We are happy to chat with you all.
Yeah, and a very different approach to this part of it. And before we run into the video, sir, can we just talk to this real fast? There's a question, basically it's about internal and external surveys. And so most good customers seem to focus on both these areas. Absolutely, because it's basically taking this sort of cycle and closing the loop. It's just making it much more efficient and scalable. That's why we ask the questions. Probably one of the questions that's highly recommended, and I'm not going to get into the science of it, but one of the questions that's asked is, would you recommend this product or service, this company, to a friend or family member? And the rating is from 0 to 10. You can equate it back into a net promoter score, an ENPS, an employee net promoter score. I can also bring it onto a 1 to 5 score, strongly disagree to strongly agree. It just gives you a lot of room in it, and it allows you to look at from different product service offering and different customer service representatives. It allows me to look and gauge where are we doing it really well and where are we falling short. So if you notice in our poll question, we asked 4 questions of you. Number 1 was, would you recommend it to a friend and family member? 0, strongly disagree, all the way to 10, highly likely. We'll get a net promoter score out of that. Then we're going to ask 3 other questions. Did you find this webinar, did you find it engaging? Did it keep your interest? Number 2, did you learn something new? And number 3, was it applicable in your job, in your role? We ask those questions all the time of everyone. Internally and with organizations, we'll ask much deeper in type of surveys, but we are constantly trying to get feedback from the consumer, in this case, you all, our customers, on whether we did a good job and what we should adjust and not adjust. Is there anything else to add on that?
Not at all.
Okay, great. On Wednesday, our inclusion survey, speaking of the surveys, goes live. It'll be on our resources page. So Jamie can put that in the chat room here about our inclusivity resources, and she will have that up there on Wednesday tomorrow. It goes live. You can put in, I think, up to 40 people. It's free, completely automated, about 12 questions. So if you're dealing with and having a conversation in this diversity, equity, and inclusion area, you can instantly get feedback from team members. Do I feel respected? Is my viewpoint valued? Does this organization actively recruit people from diverse backgrounds? Great way to get into starting this conversation. And then, of course, as Sarah mentioned, we can help. And that site is up in the chat as well. Sarah, over to you.
All right, and just Marie, thanks for the question. The half-day course with Fred is going to be on July 16th. So that is a public session, so feel free. We'll get it up on our website very, very soon for you all to register for that as well.
Yeah, we'll put it in the email. It's going to be from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 8:30 to 12:30. Thank you, Jamie.
All right, we promised you some Anchorman. So if you have not seen it, you are welcome. We are giving you this gift in your life. If you have seen it, then, well, also you're welcome. So we're going to play Anchorman. We're going to play some music for you all. If you have an additional question, feel free to put that in Q&A. We'll hang out and answer those questions. But other than that, thanks for hanging out. We are going to miss you guys. We hope to see you in our virtual classroom because it's been kind of a joy to see you guys every single week coming in. So appreciate you all.